Flynn, right, who the Flynn Effect is named after, resides in New Zealand, one of the most foremost experts on intelligence testing, right? So he aroused people's attention around the world by proclaiming that women are now smarter than men, at least according to a standardized IQ test. He's been researching IQ level data covering the past century, found that most people in developed countries were getting smarter over the years, about 3 points more on average per decade. When IQ tests first came on the scene, women tended to score well below men, oftentimes as much as 5 points lower. Since that time, however, women have been growing smarter at a faster rate than men and now average a point higher than men. Okay, so they use this thing called the Raven's Progressive Matrices IQ test. They gave it to subjects ranging from 10 years old to 30. But then in the more recent study, he restricted it to 15 to 18-year-olds, presumably the age at which full intelligence is developed, but prior to being degraded by environmental factors. Okay, so then it raises the question, well, how accurate are these things? In any case, such tests are based on a score of 100 as signifying the average person's intelligence level. So anyway, 500 males and 500 females from a wide variety of so-called advanced countries like Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, and Argentina were tested. Women scored a half to a whole point higher in all of them. Okay, the only exception was Israel, where men still scored a couple points higher than women. Okay, so this is one of the, he's not sure why. There's different ideas. Women are expected to multitask to get jobs and go to work while still raising children. And one idea is that women's brains had to adjust to this, making them smarter.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Environmental Coffee House. It is Sandy Schoelles and Jennifer Hynes. I think we're a little in the internet sphere of weirdness tonight, but we're going to do our best here with our connection. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see everybody out there. Kim, thank you for moderating, and Trulia and Jean and Al Franken's with us. Al Franken's with us, yeah. And
Oh,
Devon and TC. Listen, I had to do that. Somebody had to take that clip from Paul's video, right?
that was
Uh,
awesome.
and Rich
It was very
Diana.
funny.
Mwah. And Patrick McNulty, hello. Hello, hello, hello. All right, so let's get started. Patty P, you're here. Robert Crane. Okay, we've got Billy Joe, Midas Lisa, Karen Jeffers Tracy. Wow, hi. And Jennifer she said, hello, everybody.
Oh,
So happy to
yes.
be with you tonight. All right, Jen. So I am going to hand it over to you, my love, to give
All
the
right.
50,000 foot from the moon overview of what we're doing tonight.
Yeah. Well, guys, I have to say, a lot of our shows are profound. I think this one actually is extremely profound. We're covering just a few articles, probably five, with some Twitters from Zach, but it sums up the whole situation. So the first one up, right out of the Washington Post: fires, floods, and drought, scenes of extreme weather from space. Satellite imagery reveals a superheated planet that's ablaze, swamped, and desiccated. So
Oh, boy.
kick off the evening with that. Um, and then we're going over to the Business Insider, and we are going to read an article that's just come out yesterday. Climate scientist says total climate breakdown is now inevitable. Quote, it is already a different world out there. Soon it will be unrecognizable to every one of us. Yeah. And then we're going to have a little intermission, play some video
Which, yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep, yep, yeah.
Yeah. And then the second half is really going to be kind of about the Arctic. And we're going to do an article that actually Zach Labe wrote in July, State of the Arctic 2022. And this is from Polar Bears and the Changing Arctic.
It's so
So,
nice.
mhm.
Yeah.
But this is a hard-hitting article from Zach. He sums the whole thing up. Then we're gonna jump into some Zach Labe Twitter tweets, and we're gonna follow it up with, an entry from the ICE blog, Climate Change at the Poles and Around the Globe, and this is entitled Wildfires and Ice. Heat waves put spotlight on the Arctic, and this just came out the day before yesterday. So all of these hot off the press, no pun intended. With that, Sandy, we can probably go ahead and get started. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Let me get us going for our nice little. Oh, guess what? I have to fix your overlay. Let me get
Oh,
you.
is that
Sorry,
right?
guys. Yeah, just give a second. You can, if you want to start doing this, you want to start this
Okay.
article, I can
Yeah,
fix your
sure.
overlay.
They
I'm going
don't
to have
have
to
to
fix it.
they don't have to wait to see me. So,
No, we can fix this.
all right,
I'm going
guys,
to
let's get
fix it.
started with this. Fires,
Mm-hmm.
floods, and drought, scenes of extreme weather from space. So this is a fascinating article, and the pictures are amazing. If you're going to gain a holistic perspective on a problem, it can help to step back for a wider view. Satellite imagery showing scenes of extreme weather from space reveals a superheated planet that's ablaze, desiccated, and swamped in different areas all at the same time. Weather satellites are constantly peering down on Earth, sending back high resolution images to provide a real time view of what's going on. Some polar orbiting zipping around the Earth orbits take them over both north and south poles as they trace lines of longitude. Others orbit the Earth in sync with its rotation, with sensors locked on the same patch of real estate. These, 22,236 miles above the Earth, are known as geostationary. The past month has featured scores of fires, floods, droughts, heat waves, and other calamitous meteorological occurrences, which have been intensified by human caused climate change. Atmospheric scientists have relied on data from scientists to help them issue forecasts and warnings, while also keeping them abreast of the atmosphere's long term temperament. Here we take a look at some of the most striking images from weather satellites in recent weeks. Now, goodness gracious, take a look at this plummeting water levels in Lake Mead. This little trio of um, well, we've got one from 2000, one from 2021, and one from 2022. You can tell that this whole Overton arm is drying up. It's just utterly amazing. So this is a comparison of water levels on the Overton arm of Lake Mead between 2000 and 2022 using natural color images from Landsat 7 and Landsat 8 from NASA. So Lake Mead, located in southern Nevada and northern Arizona, is the largest wet reservoir in the United States, forming after the construction of the Hoover Dam in the late 1920s and 1930s. Some 20 million Americans depend on its water, most notably in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. And here's a photo of Lake Mead such as it was in 2000. And you can see that that Overton arm at the very top is still present. So that's in the process of drying up. Since 1983, a combination of increased water demand and persistent drought has kept the reservoir below its capacity. Nowadays, it is sitting at record low levels. NASA writes that at full capacity, the water levels would stand at 1,220 feet, where the man made lake meets the Hoover Dam. Instead, that level currently stands at 1,040.65 feet. Last year at this time, it was 1,068 feet. And a year before that, it was 1,085 feet. So it looks like it's going down about 20 feet or more a year, 20 to 30 feet a year. Wow. About 10% of the water in Lake Mead comes from local precipitation and groundwater each year, wrote NASA, with the rest coming from snowmelt in the Rocky Mountains that flow down the Colorado River watershed through Lake Powell, Glen Canyon, and the Grand Canyon. And here's a picture of Lake Mead, such as it is now in 2022.
It's like,
and just,
squeak! The little
I
squeak of
mean,
what it was.
I mean, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. I
Okay.
really
What
don't.
do
I
we
mean, this
say? What do we say?
we say this.
It's scary.
It is
That's
scary.
what we say.
It is scary. It's
That's what
totally
we
scary.
say. Yes.
It's totally scary. This thing is drying up, and 20 million people depend on it. And you can see it going down. You don't see it going back up. So, when's it going to happen? I don't know. That means Lake Mead is not just a barometer of how much rain has fallen. It is an indicator of the West's greater water supply as a whole, much of which is stored in the wintertime snowpack. North of Lake Mead, Lake Powell is only at 27% capacity, according to NASA, and the entire Colorado River system is at 35%. More than a third of the western United States is listed as being within an extreme or exceptional drought. The two most severe tiers on the U.S. Drought Monitor scale, with southern Nevada solidly in exceptional shading. Reservoir levels are extremely low, wrote the drought monitor. Hydropower production is limited. Alternative power is expensive. Groundwater decreases. Water allotments to farmers and ranchers are curtailed. It also notes ecosystem viability is threatened. Many climate change experts expect the drought engulfing the West will only continue to worsen in the years ahead. The
Okay.
drought,
Oh, you
yes.
want to show the video?
I mean, we
It's
could. I
it's
could
kind of
continue.
cool.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Let
just gonna play it. It has no sound.
It
It's
has no
just the
sound.
drone, so you can read as
Oh, let
I
me go
play
ahead
it.
and keep reading and
Yep.
you tell me when it's done. Okay. So the drought has fostered conditions ripe for explosive wildfire development and extreme fire behavior, both of which have been manifest in recent weeks across the Golden State. Fires in California are burning precariously close to Yosemite National Park, including the Oak Fire, which erupted on Friday. So far, the Oak Fire has torched 18,532 acres in Mariposa County in the vicinity of Highway 140 and Karsten Road. It's 26% contained. Quote, although good progress continues on the fire, there is much work to be done, wrote CAL FIRE, the agency responsible for overseeing combating the blaze. Tom Yulesman, director of the Center of Environmental Journalism at the University of Colorado, yay, Colorado!
Yay!
Contributor, yay, Colorado! And contributor to Discover magazine, used the imagery from the Landsat satellite to produce the three-dimensional flyover above. Wow. 18 of the top 20 largest wildfires in California state history have occurred since 2003. Human caused climate change is amplifying drought and excessive heat, which supports more extreme wildfires. So that was just one. My goodness, this is an amazing article, is it not?
It is. They have good writers.
They do. They do. Okay, guys, buckle up. We're continuing. Wildfires in Portugal, Spain, and France.
Look at that
More than
graphic.
1,000 people died amid the extreme record breaking heat wave that brought searing temperatures to Western Europe 1 to 2 weeks ago and prompted Britain's first red warning for heat ever issued.
Mm.
Temperatures reached 40 degrees Celsius, which is 104 Fahrenheit, for the first time on record there, with nearly 3 dozen weather stations shattering Britain's previous record of 38.7 Celsius, which is only 101 Fahrenheit. London did hit 104 degrees. That's amazing.
Yeah.
40,000 residents of France were evacuated due to wildfires, and a number of the other blazes torched the landscape in Portugal and Spain. Climate change helped push the already toasty air mass into record territory, which more effectively evaporated moisture from the ground, desiccating the landscape. Portugal, temperatures reached 45 degrees Celsius, which is 113 degrees Fahrenheit, on July 13th in the town of Liara, where more than 3,000 hectares, which is 7,400 acres, had burned, wrote NASA. More than half the country was on red alert as firefighters battled 14 active fires. The Suomi NPPVIRS satellite day-night band captured the signatures of wildfires burning on that night of July 12th. Visible west of Madrid is a fire that burned 3,700 acres. Now,
Wow.
another disaster that happened was the extreme flooding in St. Louis. And you might be able to play that little video, Sandy. I don't know if it plays or
All
not,
right.
or if
Let's
it's just
see.
a picture. I'm just gonna
Well,
go ahead and
I'll play
read.
it. Read it. I'll play it, and that's that.
The effects of human caused climate change can exacerbate both flooding and drought extremes. The reason is simple: a warmer atmosphere speeds up evaporation of water. Where storm fronts are present, such as in the Midwestern US at the moment, the extra water in the atmosphere means heavier downpours. But in much of the Western US, where there are no such fronts, the warmed atmosphere more effectively extracts what little moisture there is from vegetation and soil, reinforcing drought. On Monday, residents of St. Louis woke up to a flash flood emergency, with a number of water rescues conducted as hours of torrential downpours deluged the city. A staggering
Mm.
7.78 inches of rain came down in 6 hours' time. Wow, that's more than an inch an hour. Wow. More of which fell before most of which fell before sunrise. The day logged a total of 9.04 inches at St. Louis International Airport, about a quarter of the city's annual rainfall. The historic drenching quarter of their rainfall fell in one day. Holy moly. Wow.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mm-mm-mm. The historic drenching, which has just a 10% chance of happening in any given year, was the most extreme on record for the city. And that's saying something because St. Louis regularly gets flooded. St. Peters, Missouri, northwest of St. Louis, had close to 13 inches by
Oh my
4
God.
p.m.
And we
Jeez,
have friends from
look at
Missouri in the
that.
audience.
Look at
Yeah.
that. Look at
Yeah.
that atmospheric river thing just flowing right over St. Louis, just bam, bam, bam. It got socked with that whole length of that thing.
Yeah,
Mm,
it did.
mm,
Yeah, it
mm.
did.
Instigating the flooding was a stationary front draped across the metro region, which acted as train tracks for heavy thunderstorm cells to ride along. That's just what we saw, right? Oh my
Oh,
god,
we did.
we did. Record moisture was in place too. Heavy downpours are becoming more frequent in St. Louis. Since World War II, days with 1.5 inches of rain have become about 30 to 40% more common.
Mm.
There has also been an uptick in annual precipitation, with the data suggesting a jump from about 34 inches in the 1940s to 43 inches now. Wow, that's a lot. And then, I think that's the end of that article,
Yeah,
Sandy.
but it
I
was
think
good.
that's
And there were
it.
more
Very
articles.
good.
There was
Yeah,
another one I found, but it's gone. They're just putting all the
yeah,
other shit in. But it was really good. And
yeah.
but now we're gonna move into the insider, which
Okay.
this one is pretty interesting. Uh, mainstream media, but they are reporting climate scientist says total climate breakdown is now inevitable. It is
Mm.
already a different world out there, and soon it will be unrecognizable to every one of us. Now, this is a kind of a little mainstream business
Wow.
insider. We read
Oh
them
my
this because
god.
so this is Bill McGuire's new book, and he's arguing that
Okay.
it's too late to avoid climate catastrophe. And he's an earth science professor, and he says lethal heat waves and extreme weather events are just the beginning.
Oh
I'm
my
seriously
goodness.
thinking I need to play some kind of music for this one. It's
Yeah,
so
I think
scary.
so.
I
It
don't
is
know, some
scary.
kind of scary one. What do you think? All
I
right,
think
let me get this one on, and we'll play it, and we'll spice up the show with a little bit of sound here.
that'll
Okay,
be
so
nice.
here we go. All right. I don't know if I can find one. Let's just go. Many climate scientists, he said, are more scared about the future than uh, willing to admit it in public, right? Record breaking heat waves, lethal flooding, extreme weather events are just the beginning of the climate crisis, according to a leading UK scientist. In his new book, published Thursday, Hothouse Earth, An Inhabitant's Guide, Bill McGuire argues that after years of ignoring warnings from scientists, it's too late. We're just too fucking late to avoid the catastrophic impacts of climate change. The University College of London Earth Sciences professor pointed to a record breaking heat wave across the UK this month and dangerous wildfires that destroyed 16 homes in East London as evidence of the rapidly changing climate. McGuire says weather will begin to regularly surpass current extremes despite government goals to lower carbon emissions. And as we head further into 2022, it is already a different world out there, McGuire told The Guardian. Soon it will be unrecognizable to every one of us. So his perspective that severe climate change is now inevitable and irreversible is more extreme than many scientists who believe that with lowered emissions, the most severe potential impacts could be avoided. That's bullshit. All right. Excuse me. It's bullshit. McGuire did not immediately respond to insiders' request for comment. Many climate scientists, McGuire said, are much more scared about the future than they are willing to admit in public. He calls their reluctance, where is it? He calls their reluctance to acknowledge the futility of current climate action, climate appeasement. And how many have been doing that? And he says it only makes the stuff worse. Instead of focusing on net zero emission goals, which McGuire says won't reverse the current course of climate change, he argues we need to adapt to the hothouse world. And what did we talk about our last show? All this adaptation stuff that lies ahead, because we're not going to mitigate it. I mean, unless Harvard gets called up and they're going to do, fly around and spraying aerosols. But that's what David Keith is waiting for with his research. But he says we're going to start taking action to try to stop material conditions from deteriorating further. This is a call to arms, he told The Guardian. So if you feel the need to glue yourself to a motorway or blockade an oil refinery, do it. This week, Senate Democrats agreed to a potential bill that would be the most significant action ever taken by the U.S. to address climate change. The bill, which includes cutting carbon emissions by 40% by 2030, with $369 billion to go toward energy and climate programs, which are, remember, the techno-utopian dream of, fixing everything. And Joe Manchin got his lovely, it's like canceling it. It's going to cancel itself out with the things that were given to the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, totally.
Basically, because he's from West Virginia, which is
he's a coal man.
Yeah, and they're flooding. I mean, they've had people die, so he's an asshole anyway. All right, let me go. We're going to do our little intermission because we're going to try to keep our show to an hour tonight since I'm moving around already, and I have been, if you want to see, these are 2 plums, and they come from the new trees. I planted an apple and 2 plums this week, and my food forest will end on Sunday. Well, for this year, I'm going to plant 2 peach trees because they ran out of cherry trees, and I like to buy locally. So I got to keep it to an hour, guys. I'm sore as shit, to be quite honest. So what we're going to do is we're going to go right into these videos. I'm going to show you YouTube, and we're going to look. Okay, wait, that wasn't what I wanted. We're going to go and look at YouTube. And I know you guys can hear this. You can hear us. You won't see us. But I'm going to show you what I searched. And there are a gazillion videos about what's going on. So I'm going to pick a couple. I want to play the Alberta one first. So instead of an intermission, we're doing this. And this is what happened in Alberta. And I'm sure you can hear it. Let me just make sure. Okay. I know you guys can hear it. Tell me if you can't. This is Alberta. Just now. Today.
We have to wait until it comes down a bit, buddy.
Those are the kind of clouds that came over my place and hit in a tornado last Friday, 20 miles away.
Mm.
Yeah, Jennifer, I had a panic attack, a full-out panic attack.
Oh my God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, I'm going to come to the next one. All right, we're going to go to the next one. And all right. So that happened. That's a 8-hour ago video. All right.
Wow.
And so that was in Alberta. And then flooding in China. I thought we would look a little bit up at this and see what's going on there.
Holy crap.
On August 1, 2022, floods hit Jiangsu, in mainland China, causing severe damage to property, motorcycles, public transportation, and infrastructure in Jiangsu. Videos circulating on social media showed one of the country's hospitals, submerged in heavy flooding, requiring patients to be moved upstairs and to another hospital. Several residential garages were flooded, and many cars were submerged. There were also several residents who drove their vehicles during the flood. According to local authorities' reports, there were 13 million people affected, with more than 1 million people being moved to safety and 73 deaths. The Jiangsu Meteorological Observatory stepped up and issued a red rainstorm warning signal at 12:45 a.m. Meteorologists had previously warned that this weekend there would be more rain in some areas of Henan, and possibly
once they put that shit on, you have to go. All right, so we saw China, and now we're going to look at Oman. This is Oman. This is 3 hours ago. Yeah.
Up in the middle of the desert. Did they have,
Yep.
holy
Look at
cow. My God.
Oh my.
Oh my God.
Unreal.
It is noticeable the recent climate change in the Gulf countries. Sudden terrifying floods hit the Sultanate of Oman on August 1, 2022. Heavy rains caused widespread flooding across the country, as sewage systems were inundated. Landslides were observed due to torrential rains and floods, and roads were destroyed. Cars were terrifyingly swept away with torrents, and roads turned into running rivers. Boats and
Unreal, huh,
helicopters are
guys?
used to reach
Holy
stranded
crap.
citizens.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Traveling was impossible in
Oman,
many areas in the
2022.
Sultanate of
Look
Oman.
at this.
Flood warnings are
today.
still in effect in the coming
Yes.
days, including for neighboring countries, including Saudi Arabia. Climate change plays an important
No
role
love
in the
lost.
weather of the Gulf states as the UAE witnessed strong floods and heavy rains in the past week.
All right, here we go. They ruin it. All right, we're going to get off this
All right.
now. And let me see
Thanks.
if I have one more. I think I wanted to show one more that was, where was it? Okay. Oh, in the Middle East. Middle East flooding. But I was looking for Big Bear Lake, 81. Okay, Big Bear Lake. It was, no, that's too long. Well, I think we were pretty much getting the idea, but I really had wanted to show
Yeah.
United States. But look at Texas wildfire update. So there's wildfires in Texas. I mean, there is just so much. Phoenix. Here 9 hours ago. Phoenix. What's going on in Phoenix?
I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Look at this.
Oh, shoot. Lord mighty.
And the news is not reporting all this. We are. I mean, we're just taking it off. Yeah, look at that.
So
Look at that.
there's some things I want to say, Sandy, about
Yes.
about abrupt climate change. And you
I
know,
will make this. Uh-huh. All right, let me get us back. Oop. Okay. I'm
Yeah.
going to get us back.
So-
Go ahead, start talking.
thank you. So there's so many, we live on a ball, basically a sphere, and we inhabit one tiny little point on that sphere, in very, very tiny point, and we don't go much out of that. And if we depend on our personal, visceral experience of walking around our yard as to what, abrupt climate change is, I mean, there's so many people that say it's not happening, and it is, and you just have to take a broader view. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, look at these. Look at this. You won't be able to hear this. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this, but she was showing. Here,
Yeah, I think you can hear it.
here we
Good.
go. This was West Virginia. I don't
But
know
as
if they can
flames
hear
rage
this.
in the west,
You can hear
But
it.
if you
the
can't hear
opposite
it, it's
in
just the
Kentucky,
graphics
where
that are
flooding has
amazing.
killed dozens, including at
Look at
least
that.
4 children.
That's West
Search
Virginia.
teams scoured the hills from above, while on the ground,
And you're right, Jennifer.
sniffer dogs joined in to try and find the many who are still missing.
There's human scent.
All
in the
right, so
water
you guys
because
get that idea
others
of
have
what
drowned
the
and
heck is
pushed through
going
the
on.
water.
The torrential rains began last week, and
Oh my
today,
gosh, wait,
even
maybe
more
I should make that
downpours
bigger.
slowed that rescue
Look at that.
effort. Officials say they've restored cell service in the area,
Oh my
which
God.
could make it easier for people stranded
Imagine.
to call for help.
And
After the water
isn't this Mitch
receded,
McConnell's
the
state?
first thing I saw was
Mhm. Yeah,
that's
it
Mitch
is.
McConnell's state. So he doesn't give a shit. But
He's a
actually,
piece
what
of
we're
shit.
going to do now is move over to Zach Labe. We're going to show you our guy, and we're going to try to get him on as a guest. And Jen, do you want to talk about Zach, who he is, and we can tag team Zach in the article? You can read the article.
Well, why don't you go ahead and introduce who he is, because I don't have
Okay.
that pulled up right now.
Oh, okay. Zach, and we use here he is on Twitter. We always show you his stuff, and he is a postdoctoral researcher working at NOAA Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Lab That's a mouthful. And atmospheric oceanic sciences programs at Princeton. So his current research interests explore the intersection of climate variability, extreme events, decadal prediction, and data science methods. In addition to academic research, he is very passionate about improving science education, communication, accessibility, and outreach through engaging data visualizations like that. So he got his PhD in May 2020. Remember, we said we were so happy for
Yeah.
that, and we were like, "Yay, Zach!" We were so proud of him and so happy. And but what we're going to do is we're just going to move on a little bit. I'm just going to show you a little bit of his 9 hours ago, this one, and his Twitter, because it's really good. But then we're going to go to his actual page. But right here, he was showing trends in August air temperatures show greater warming around the perimeter of the Arctic, especially in the Kara Sea, the Laptev Sea, the Canadian Arctic archipelago regions. Yeah.
Exactly what we've been saying. And you can see the Arctic sea ice extent stamped in white in the right in the middle.
Look at
That's the
that.
Arctic sea ice extent. And of course, you don't have anomalous warming over ice because it's constant.
Beautiful stuff, though, he does. And that's what captures people's attention and where people are going to learn. He did this one on August. He updated this. Well, we might as well take a look at it. He updated this one. I want
So
it to
this is the ice
go
thickness and the
bigger.
ice newness, I believe. The white being the oldest ice, and the blue and the dark blue being the youngest ice, like annual. So through the years, from 98, I guess, to present, you can see how the old ice is going away. Just going away.
Well, he's amazing.
There's hardly any of it left.
Yeah, look at it. It's very sad, very, very sad, Jennifer. All right, so he also has his Arctic sea ice extent, which is the 11th lowest on record. Look at that.
There you go.
All right. We're going to move on because Jen's going to take over and she's going to read. This is by him, but this is his Polar Bears International. And we'll tell you a little about it. It's Polar Bears, the Changing Arctic, what we do. They have a mission. It'll be in the show notes, all kinds of stuff. They even have stuff for kids, which is wonderful. News and media and how to help. So Jen, take it away.
You betcha, baby. Okay, guys, strap in. State of the Arctic 2022. This is Zach Labe's summary and just came out in July 7th. The amount of Arctic sea ice naturally varies throughout the year in a shape resembling a seasonal cycle. In other words, the maximum extent of the Arctic sea ice is usually reached sometime in March, and the annual minimum extent is usually set in September. However, due to human-caused climate change, we are witnessing large changes in this natural cycle of Arctic sea ice growth and melt. In fact, the thickness of Arctic sea ice in some regions has thinned by nearly 2 meters, or 66%, since the middle of the 20th century. Meanwhile, the extent of Arctic sea ice during September is declining at a rate of 13% per decade, or approximately shrinking by the size of the state of South Carolina. While long-term declines in Arctic sea ice are now found in every month of the year, the largest drops have been during the late summer months. Therefore, monitoring the annual Arctic summer melt of Arctic sea ice is particularly important for evaluating these long-term trends. As expected, 2022 is no exception to the recent string of low sea ice years. So now they're talking about this figure 1 As figure 1 shows, every day this year, which is the red line, you can see that, Sandy, in the Arctic sea ice graph below, has witnessed sea ice below the long-term average, which is the blue line. And as early as July, Arctic sea ice levels are nearly 2 standard deviations below average this summer. So that is well outside of the 2 standard deviation norm, which is the standard in standard deviations, right?
The standard.
This has significant consequences for the entire environment of the Arctic, including changes to the regional habitats for polar bear populations. No new records set yet in 2022, although the long-term trends are clear in the Arctic, such as declining Arctic sea ice, warming ocean and atmospheric temperatures, melting glaciers, thawing permafrost, shift in plant phenology, and Arctic greening. There is also large year-to-year variability. This means that not every year we'll observe a new record. It's all about the trends. An excellent blog by Dr. Ed Hawkins described this type of sea ice variability as analogous to that of bouncing a rolling ball down a hill. While downward movement of the ball is inevitable, there are still periods of upward bounces. That's a good way to think about it. Wow. Really good way to think about it.
He's good.
Yeah, I know. It's just brilliant. He really knows how to get his point across. In the real world, this variability is tied to the chaotic nature of our atmosphere, often called internal variability, and similar to the concept of the butterfly effect. This characteristic is well simulated by our climate models and is considered when analyzing future climate change projections. This is one reason that it is nearly impossible to predict the exact timing of our first ice-free Arctic summer, which everybody always asks. When's our first BOE? And
It's not
the
this
answer
year.
is we don't know.
No, of course not. No.
So far, 2022 fits this example perfectly. While we've witnessed sea ice levels consistent with the long-term declining trend, there have been no new monthly records set yet this year. Cooler spring, compared to some recent years, in the last 2 months have observed fairly small temperature departures across the greater Arctic Ocean basin. Cooler temperatures have generally been found around northern Greenland and stretching to the North Pole, while anomalous warmth has been confined to the Siberian coastal region around the Kara and the Laptev Sea. These patterns of warmer and colder temperatures are linked to the position and strength of the jet stream and regions of low sea ice cover. Averaging temperatures over the past 12 months helps to remove some of the monthly variability from the changes in weather patterns and subsequently reveals the familiar pattern of only warmer departures across nearly the entire northern hemisphere. Pattern changes in June. A shift in the overall orientation of the jet stream over the last few weeks has led to a dramatic kickoff to the boreal summer season with a series of record heat waves across many regions of the northern hemisphere. This unusual heat has moved into parts of the Arctic. Temperatures of more than 5 degrees C or 9 degrees Fahrenheit above average occurred around Hudson Bay in June, which contributed to a rapid decline of sea ice cover. The breakup of the sea ice was especially extreme in the northeastern Hudson Bay, which may have impacted polar bear populations living in the Davis Strait region. Excessive warmth also occurred in June over Svalbard, Scandinavia, and Siberia, with numerous temperature records being set in these areas. Last month was the hottest June ever recorded at Svalbard Airport. All of the heat and sunshine resulted in another near record start to sea ice breakup in the Laptev Sea. And more broadly, sea ice remains well below average in the Atlantic side of the Arctic Ocean. So you can take a look at this Arctic sea ice volume by year, and the volume is just going down, down, down. We're in the lower fifth, lower sixth of that whole spread with the blue and the red, and we are the yellow. So
Down, down, down.
down, down, down,
Yep.
down, down, down. Outlook for the rest
Are
of
we
the
going
summer.
down?
Down. Predicting the evolution of the Arctic sea ice cover, especially at the end of summer melt season, is critically important for a wide range of stakeholders. But the challenge to predict the annual minimum extent of the Arctic sea ice is vast and difficult. In recent years, the National Science Foundation and the Arctic Research Consortium of the U.S. have organized a community project called the Sea Ice Prediction Network to investigate this issue. Scientific teams from around the world submit to forecasts based on models ranging in complexity from linear regression to advanced climate models in order to predict the evolution of summertime Arctic sea ice. The latest predictions from this network of forecasts do not suggest a new record low this year for the annual sea ice minimum in September. However, weather forecast models indicate an acceleration of sea ice melt conditions through at least mid-July over parts of the Canadian Arctic, with temperatures rising more than 15 degrees C, which is 27 degrees Fahrenheit, above average. Satellite observations also confirm that melting is already well underway in the Beaufort Sea, with large melt ponds visible over top of the existing sea ice. So they've got ponds on top of the ice. Wow. The consequences of this warmer and drier weather are also being felt across the surrounding land areas, with extreme wildfire and poor air quality found in Alaska and northwestern Canada. It will be important for scientists to monitor the evolution of this extreme event over the next few weeks and assess how it will impact sea ice of the Northwest Passage and for polar bear populations throughout the rest of the Canadian Arctic archipelago. And here is kind of an interesting thing you can see in this recent temperature trends in the Arctic. This is looking, it's hard to see how this is, but this is looking, bird's eye view with the North Pole in the center of each one of those little balls. And you can see the hot spots, right? So in January, you're having a hot spot just over by kind of the Barents Sea and the Kara Sea, right? And that's persisting throughout February. These are anomalous temperatures, and it cools off in March and kind of picks up again. Then throughout June, well, pretty much May too. May's a little rosy, but June, July, and August, no anomalous temperatures. The anomalous temperatures, guys, it's happening in the winter. Check out October, November, and December. You have the hot anomalous regions in the Arctic across the whole thing, so you can kind of see what's going on. Long-term trends in the Arctic. As I pointed out earlier, it's important to remember that even though this large year-to-year variability in sea ice conditions and regional weather, there are massive changes unfolding in the Arctic. Comparing the last 4 decades of sea ice volume reveals a remarkable shift in the state of the Arctic. Ice is now younger and thinner. Recent Arctic warming is particularly large during the late fall and September, which relates to the release of heat that is absorbed in the upper ocean around the September sea ice minimum. Without reducing greenhouse gas emissions, climate models indicate that even when sea ice forms during the winter, it will be a lot thinner than in the past. This would have large ecological consequences and even affect socioeconomic industries, like through shipping and transportation. Future warming of the Arctic could be linked to changes in extreme weather, such as through shifts in the polar vortex and jet stream. A recent study also found that the survivability of many polar bear populations may be at risk without a large reduction in fossil fuel emissions, and therefore a smaller amount of future warming within the Arctic. So that's it, Sandy. And then he gives a little blurb here about where to find more graphs. And as Sandy said, Zach Labe's a postdoctoral research associate at the Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences program at Princeton University and at NOAA Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory. Wow. I mean, what a guy. I mean, he really has given us views into
Yeah.
data
Amazing
in a
stuff.
way that, really gets you really understand it. And I know for everybody here that's so important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
I wanted to move over
Oh, sure.
quickly before we read the last one and show you what Peter Carter's up to. And he said there's a climate endgame paper because the IPCC was in. It was trending today on Twitter. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
looked, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm not going to go into this, but there's a lot of people were talking about this paper.
Oh, yeah.
Catastrophic climate change risk aversion means immediate rapid global emissions decline. Now we can look
Yeah.
at this.
Yeah. So one thing about this IPCC picture, are you
Mm-hmm.
showing that picture that you sent me of the
Yeah, it's
climate
Peter
endgame?
Carter's. Yep. Yep.
Exploring catastrophic climate change scenarios, the
Mm-hmm.
language. Listen to the language. Could anthropogenic climate change result in worldwide societal collapse or even human extinction? At present, this is a dangerously underexplored topic, not underexplored here in Environmental Coffee House. We talk about it all
Sure
the
not.
time,
Yeah.
all the time. Yet, there are ample reasons to suspect that climate change could result in a global catastrophe. Conclusions: there is ample evidence that climate change could become catastrophic. We could enter such end games at even modest levels of warming.
Mm.
It is time for the scientific community to grapple with the challenge of better understanding catastrophic climate change.
Mm-hmm.
These are powerful words. These
Yeah,
are
they are.
words trying desperately to get somebody, wake up,
I
you
know.
know? And you try, and these are strong words. I mean, last week we were talking about Antonio Guterres saying collective suicide.
Mm.
Listen to the strong words we just read.
Yeah.
People are trying. The ones who are awake are trying so hard to wake people up, and it's so hard to do. So
Yes, it
hard.
is. All right.
So hard.
Thank you, Jennifer. We haven't gotten to a flush of the day yet.
Oh
We're getting
my.
there. Earl's here with us. Don't worry, Earl. We'll get to the flush of the day. So our last paper, or it's a the ice blog, and it's pretty interesting. It is climate change and the poles and around the globe, and I think Jennifer and I are going to tag team this one.
Okay.
I'll
Oh,
start and
hang on. Let me clarify something. You said climate change at the
uh-oh, climate
poles and
climate
around the globe? Is that what you said?
it says at the top, climate change at the poles and around the globe.
It's just because I haven't got that I think I pulled the wrong one up.
Oh, do you want me to resend this to you? This was the one you
Yeah,
sent me. Okay, hang on, guys. We could do everything in a minute.
yeah.
Everything.
That's why it's always good to check in with your partner and make sure
Yeah,
you're on the same page, because if you're not, she'll be
yeah.
reading one article and I'll be reading another, and I think everybody's gonna get thoroughly confused.
No, we will be fine. We will
We
be
will be
fine. I'm
fine.
just going to send you this right now. And
Okay.
as we do this, Jennifer, let me find you. And we get this pulled up because it's a good one for the end. Um,
Sure.
okay, here we go. Where are you? Usually you're like right at the top of the chat. And okay, here we go. Jennifer's getting it.
I'm getting it,
And you're getting it.
and I've
Okay.
got it.
She's
Okay, I'm
got
good.
it. She's got
And
it. We
is the
are
right
going.
one. I did
It
have the right
is
one.
the right one. It is
Okay,
the
good.
right one.
Wildfires and ice, heat waves put a spotlight on the Arctic. We are on
Yep.
the same page.
Okay, babe. I'm going to start it.
All right.
And and of course, Jennifer's going to bring up the end as well as she always does. So here we go. And this is she's amazing. This one, she writes her ice blog, and she's a glacial. I think she's a climate scientist up there. Anyway, recently, and all the stuff will be in the show notes. Okay, recently, and have I heard the Arctic being mentioned so often in the media as in this hottest of summers? I wish the reason were a positive one. Alas, disastrous events well south of the Arctic have drawn attention to the far north. Spain, Italy, Portugal, and Greece have been battling drought and devastating fires. A scorching heat wave has wreaked havoc even in Germany. Unprecedented forest blazes are dominating headlines like Bloomberg Green, the fire evacuators in dozens of people from towns near the Bohemian Switzerland National Park on the Czech Republic border with Germany as a wildlife raged out of control. So it's not just California, which actually the size of Boise, Idaho is on fire. 62, it was 62 miles. Now it's more than 62 miles, and it was not contained. Okay, so farmers are predicting low harvest because of persistent droughts like where I live. And we did get a little rain though last night, but it's been a drought. The UK, normally better known for its windy, wet, and changeable weather, has seen record temperatures soaring to 40 C. Ed Hawkins, a 40 C heat wave in the UK is almost impossible without climate disruption, because I really hate the word climate change. Climate
Yeah.
disruption.
And Sandy, those are the houses we saw last week on our
Yep.
show.
Yep.
London burning.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Yep, the recent event would have been closer to 36 in a world before we started burning fossil fuels. Next time the weather behaves similarly, it might be 41 with areas above 40. So it's scary. Carbon Brief's newly published State of the Climate report, Zeke Housefather writes, June 2022 saw the warmest temperatures on record over the world's land areas, and record-breaking heat waves have swept across the northern hemisphere. And Jennifer, this is where I'm going to do the flush of the day, because we need to flush away all of this horror. So here we go. Let's flush away all of the horror for tonight. Goodbye, horror.
Goodbye, horror.
Goodbye. Even in a drought, we're flushing. Yeah, we are. Okay. So, June 2022 saw the warmest temperatures. And Jennifer, take it
Yes.
over.
June 2022 saw the warmest temperatures on record over the world's land areas, and record-breaking heat waves have swept across the northern hemisphere, particularly in continental Europe, the UK, China, and parts of the US. The year as a whole will still probably only go down in records as the 5th warmest on record in most data sets, with global temperatures being pushed down due to persistent double-dip La Nina event that has brought cooler ocean waters to the surface in the tropical Pacific, Housefather explains. However, even with 2022 not setting a new record, the world will have experienced its 8th warmest years on record in the past 8 years. Oh my God. That trend much? And as another author reminds us, while climate scientists often focus on global average temperature changes, no one lives in the global average. Land temperatures can be more representative of climate changes most people experience. And on land, June 2022 saw the warmest temperatures since record began in the late 1850s. So it's being offset by the La Nina, and because they're taking a global average, and because we are 75% water or so, right? As we've got the La Nina gassing up all this cooler water, right?
God,
That's
Jennifer.
averaging, and it's off-putting and making it only seem like the 8th warmest year, when in fact on land where we live, it's the warmest year. So
No
just kind of
more magical thinking. None. And if you
That's
are,
it.
you have your head up your ass.
Oh dear.
Quite
Oh
frankly.
dear.
Oh dear.
Attention shifts to the Arctic. At first sight, it might look like a paradox. The heat waves and related fires and drought have brought the distant Arctic into the media, and the world seeks the causes and background. In an explainer for Reuters, Danielle Trotta writes, the Arctic is warming 3 to 4 times faster than the globe as a whole, meaning there is ever less difference between northern temperatures and those closer to the equator. That is resulting in swings in the North Atlantic jet stream, which in turn leads to extreme weather events and heat waves and floods. Trotta goes on, quoting Jennifer Francis, who we all know and love, the jet stream lady extraordinaire,
Yeah.
senior scientist at Woodwell Climate Research Center. So this is a little tweet from Arctic Circle. It says the Arctic is warming up what we now know to be 3 times faster than the global average. I mean, every time you turn around, it's like more. So 3, 4, whatever, it's warming fast, and it's going on an exponential curve. And I am going to say that.
This is
This-
showing the changes.
Do you want to watch this?
Sure.
Yeah. If tell me if you guys can hear the system audio.
Warming in the Arctic
Why not?
far, far exceeds that in the mid-latitudes. And in fact, in the winter, we even see cooling happening over the continents in Asia and in the eastern part of North America. So how could this be happening? Part of the cause of that change in temperature is that when we warm the Arctic faster than the areas farther south, it's that difference in temperature between those two regions that is one of the main forces that drives the jet stream, which is this fast-moving river of air high over our heads. When the Arctic is cold, back in the good old days, and occasionally now too, this is an example from 2013, we're looking down on the North Pole here. That blue color is telling you that the Arctic is very cold. When that's the case, we have a very strong and relatively straight west to east flow in the jet stream. This is an actual example. But when the Arctic warms up a lot, as we've been seeing consistently over the last few decades, we tend to see the jet stream, those red arrows, taking a much different sort of a path as it travels around the northern hemisphere. You can see that those red arrows have moved southward, and they're taking a much more convoluted path. We're seeing much bigger north-south waves in the jet stream. And why do you care about that? Well, those waves in the jet stream are what control our weather. And when those waves get big like that, they tend to move very slowly. And when they move very slowly, we tend to see our weather patterns change much more slowly as well. So the weather becomes much more persistent. Think drought, think heat waves. Think long cold spells.
Well, she said it there, didn't she? Yep,
Well,
she spelled it
nobody
out there,
says it like
Jennifer.
Jennifer Francis. And,
Well, it's
it's
that name,
amazing.
Jennifer.
Well, there you go. And, well, we're all women of a certain age. What
Yes.
can we say? It was a popular name at a certain point in time. But what Jennifer Francis just summarized was radical, was
Radical.
absolutely radical at the time. And people were like, oh my God, really? Blah, 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 blah. And it caused all kinds of, speculation, chaos, because people hadn't thought about it before. And now it's just like second nature. Of course, we know all
Yep.
these things, but we didn't always know these things, Sandy.
No, we did not. And even when we
No.
started, we didn't
I
know all the
know.
stuff that's been rushing in
It's
the
coming in more and
research.
more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That the science is simplified in a nutshell, the wavy or meandering jet stream influenced by changes in the Arctic means intense heat lingers, gets stuck over some areas. Kai Kornhuber, a researcher of Columbia University and co-author of a study recently published in Nature Communication, explains in an interview with Axios, quote, what we're seeing right now is a slowdown of mid-latitude circulation in summer. This makes heat waves last longer, he says. The longer they last, the more intense they get. Where most media editors once would have said, heat waves? What's the Arctic got to do with it? TV, radio, newspapers, and social media are now explaining how the warming Arctic plays a key role in the development of extreme weather, such as these heat waves currently disrupting life and livelihoods around the globe. The Arctic sea ice. One key factor is changes to the ice that forms over the Arctic Ocean. July 15th was Arctic Sea Ice Day, created by the conservation group Polar Bears International to spark actions and conversations that bring attention to the rapidly melting Arctic ecosystem, why it matters, and how people around the globe can slow this warming trend. Climate scientist Zach Labe, Dr. Zach Labe, a postdoctoral research associate in the Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences program at Princeton University and the NOAA Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory, considers the state of the sea ice in a blog for this year's Arctic Sea Ice Day. It does not make for happy reading. Due to human-caused climate change, we are witnessing large changes in this natural cycle of Arctic sea ice growth and melt. In fact, the thickness of the Arctic sea ice in some regions has thinned by nearly 2 meters or 66% during the middle of the 20th century. Meanwhile, the extent of the Arctic sea ice during September is declining at a rate of 13% per decade, or approximately shrinking by the size of the state of North Carolina, the ice expert explains, which we just actually read in the previous article. And we can see here in the Arctic sea ice cover, this is extent. This is the Arctic sea ice extent, and you can see we're tracking right along the bottom, which is the 2010 mean. So it ain't going back up. The white surface of the sea ice reflects heat from the sun back into space, helping to cool the Earth, a process known as the albedo effect. The darker ice-free water holds more heat. This is one of the best known feedback loops, a self-reinforcing process in which climate change affects a factor, in this case the sea ice, which then in turn leads to more warming. Although Labe and his colleagues do not expect new records this year on the account of the natural variability, the long-term trend is clear. Quote, as I write every year on this blog, I am a climate scientist, but I continue to be alarmed by the speed and number of far-reaching effects of climate change in the Arctic.
He's so young
Labe
too,
writes.
Jennifer.
He's so wonderful.
He's so
I'm
young.
such a big
He's so
fan of
young.
his. He's
Us
so
too.
wonderful.
Look
Yeah,
at
he's
this
young
one.
and wonderful. The Greenland ice sheet. So this is a drill down on that. The Greenland ice sheet saw a sharp rise in the rate and extent of melting in late July, with 18 billion tons of water running into the North Atlantic in just 3 days. Satellite photos show melt ponds dotting the ice cover, particularly near the coasts. Ted Scambos, senior research scientist at the University of Colorado's Earth Science and Observation Center, the National Snow and Ice Data Center, yay, Colorado, said in an interview, yay, every single article. Do you guys recognize the trend? Do you see a trend? It's very interesting. I think it's interesting. I think it's cool. Said in an interview with USA Today, the spike in ice loss that occurred during the July 15th to 17th period sent enough water careening off the ice to fill 2.4 million Olympic-sized swimming pools, or cover West Virginia in a foot of water 4 inches per day, roughly. That's what's happening on the Greenland ice sheet right now. Melting ice from Greenland's mighty ice sheet is a top annual contributor to global sea level rise. The extent and speed of ice melt here will determine the future of coastal cities around the globe. And just think about that sentence deeply. The extent and speed of ice melt here will determine the future of coastal cities around the globe. Yep. I mean,
and you know,
that's
that
like so
one
huge.
statement gives the deniers so much fodder that they try to say that this isn't going to happen. Sea level rise isn't going to happen. The Heartland Institute tells me so.
It's wishful thinking and willful ignorance at
there you go.
best.
Perfect,
and
Jennifer.
It's a lot worse than that at worst. As well as leading to sea level rise, the influx of fresh water to the salty ocean changes currents and circulation, which also play a major role in influencing the climate. Is anybody listening? At a press conference ahead of the Glasgow COP26 at the end of last year, renowned scientists warned that drastic reductions in greenhouse gas emissions were required to slow ice loss and avert sea level and weather catastrophe. And there's a little in blurb, which I'm probably not going to read, but it's kind of inset there. Mm-hmm. Keeping to a lower Paris Agreement pathway could preserve a lot of the world's ice, they insist. The amount by which the world reduces greenhouse gas emissions has huge implications for how much ice the sheet will lose. The more carbon emissions are limited, the slower the ice will be lost. So we are effectively applying brakes to the system, and that's buying time, said Greenland expert Jason Box from the Geological Survey of Denmark and Greenland. Research shows that the ice is very sensitive, to which climate pathway is followed. Ruth Modum from the Danish Meteorological Institute explained at the briefing. The lower emissions, the lower warming, my cat. The lower emissions, the lower the warming in the Arctic, and the lower the melt we'll see. Alas, the COP did not lead to the results needed to halt Arctic and global warming.
Oh, okay.
In spite of urgent pleas from scientists and 3 ex-UNFCCC chiefs, Christina Figueres, Ivo de Boer, and Michael Zamet Kuchar. 30 years after the UN Climate Secretariat, UNFCCC, was founded, 50 years after the first key environment summit in Stockholm, The three warned in an op-ed for The Guardian that governments had failed to act on climate change. Quote, any further delay in concerted anticipatory global action on adaptation and mitigation will miss a brief and rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all, the climate leaders concluded. Science shows action this decade to reduce all greenhouse gas is critical, but the sum total of policies in place now will take us to a world hotter by 2.7 degrees C and perhaps a catastrophic 3.6 degrees C. Wow, think about that. Above pre-industrial levels. Their appeal appears to have fallen on deaf ears, or it has been ignored, or shifted to the back burner for reasons of expediency, resignation, or desperation. Good grief. You know, human beings have got to get a grip, and this is not the way to do it. It's time to grow up, guys. To date, there is no sign of the urgent action we need to avoid those scenarios. Okay, we're determined. We're just determined to do it to ourselves. A recent study concluded that under a moderate future emission scenario, by 2029, so what is that, 7 years, Sandy? The planet has a 2/3 chance of temporarily exceeding warming of 1.5 degrees C, even if all emissions cease on that date. Oh boy, that's what we say on that show. They're giving, yeah. If we continue on that trajectory, by 2057, there is a 2/3 chance that the planet will at least temporarily surpass the 2C. Boy, I think this is really conservative. For the Arctic ice, even temporary warming could have disastrous. Do you think hot and ice, what could happen? Disastrous consequences, as it is one of the components of the climate system that respond quickly to global temperature changes. So where do we go from here? That's a good question, guys. Good question. Campaigners are warning that only a handful of countries have updated their emission reduction goals since last year's COP26 summit. The Guardian reports that only 16 out of 197 member countries in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change have updated their plans for how to meet climate goals, known as Nationally Determined Contributions, or NDCs. We've talked about that here on this show. Countries are expected to submit updated plans by the 23rd of September. Campaigners fear it may be hard to make progress at the COP27 summit in Egypt in November when so many NDCs have not yet been updated. Mia Mosio from New Climate Institute told The Guardian she was alarmed at the lack of progress on new climate targets in 2022. Most major emitters seem to have no intention to update their NDC, she said. Germany between floods and wildfires. Here in Germany, the heat wave coincided with the first anniversary of extreme rainfall and floods that shocked the country in 2021. We covered that on this show, with buildings submerged and roads and railway lines swept away. The loss of lives and destruction in this prosperous, highly developed area of technologically advanced and highly industrialized Germany increased public awareness here of the impacts of climate change. An analysis by scientists at Germany's Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research, PIK, in December confirmed that last year's catastrophic flooding in Europe was not a one-off natural disaster, but a taste of things to come and of our own making. Too dry, too hot, too wet. Increasing Weather Persistence in European Summer was the title of the study published in Nature. This summer, the too hot prediction has proved true. Peter Hoffman from PIK, lead author of the study, based on a novel analysis of the atmospheric images and data forecast, quote, "This means that people, especially in densely populated Europe, will likely experience more and also stronger and more dangerous weather events, especially in summer. Heat waves often last longer now. The longer these weather conditions last, the more intense extremes can become." How right he was. Russia's war on Ukraine. At the same time, the Russia war on Ukraine has produced an energy crisis that is having lasting impacts on climate policy in several different ways. On one hand, the necessity of becoming independent of gas from Russia has speeded up efforts to shift from fossil fuels to renewables. The German coalition government, including the Greens, is moving fast. But after decades of delay, this cannot happen fast enough to bring energy security to the short term, not even for the coming winter. This has led to the reactivation of coal and lignite-fired power stations that speeded up construction of terminals to receive liquefied natural gas from abroad. Paradoxically, it is a Green Party minister, Robert Habeck, who finds himself not only pushing the energy wend, the shift to renewables, including the rapid expansion of wind and solar panel power, but also, albeit temporarily, one hopes, organizing a fossil revival. Blah.
Well, that's
Climate Action Tracker. What?
That's what's happening. Our
I
climate bill
know.
gives another green, checkbook to the fossil fuel industry
Yeah.
who make insane subsidies as it is. We are
I know.
truly insane.
We're insane. We're determined. We are bound and determined
Go over the
to
edge.
go down in the biggest pile of shitty flames possible because that's who we seem to be and that's how we're acting. Just saying, guys. Humans did not grow up as planned. Climate Action Tracker, which provides independent analysis to policymakers, concludes this risks locking us into another high carbon decade and keeping the Paris Agreement to 1.5 C limit out of reach. On the positive side, there's good news, guys. Don't worry.
The
On the
opium
positive
comes.
side, I hope you're listening because here's your trickle of good news. Love it right now. On the positive side, more people than ever are reducing their energy consumption, and admittedly here in wealthy Germany, talking about installing solar cells and other collectors. That was your bit of good news. Hope
All
you
right,
enjoyed
but
that.
hey, I'll take them if I could get them.
Yeah. The risk to our lifestyle through the Ukraine war and resulting energy crisis is a major motivator. Fears of a winter without gas heating is doing what climate scientists and campaigners have been trying to do for decades.
Really?
The high price of fuel is another key factor encouraging people to turn down the temperature, take shorter showers, or use public
Or
transport.
none like me. Once a week.
Instead of their
I'm in a
own
drought.
cars. A cheap rail ticket across the summer month has led to a boom in rail travel here in Germany. The question is, how can this continue in the long term? Learning from the pandemic, the corona crisis forced us all to live a very different lifestyle for a time. We reduced consumption and greenhouse gas emissions, but when it came to post-pandemic economic recovery, we missed a huge opportunity. There was no lasting drop in emissions and pollution, and we did not fast-track the transition to renewables. We run the risk of making similar mistakes with the Ukraine crisis. This could be the time when the world speeds up the transition to renewable energy. We have been made plaintively, painfully aware of the dangers of being dependent on fossil fuels. US President Joe Biden, at the head of the world's second biggest emitter, has been considering formally declaring a climate emergency. This would give him additional powers to push his renewable agenda.
Okay.
The massive opposition in the US Congress illustrates the difficulty of persuading politicians in the world over to pass and implement the legislation which could avert climate catastrophe in the face of opposition from big business and industry. In an interview with BBC News, the US climate envoy, John Kerry, said the world was learning that green energy reduced inflation, lowered energy costs, and created jobs and improved health and security. These are the messages we have to get across to protect humanity and the planet as a whole from climate catastrophe. It is not easy to convince people to do things which they are uncomfortable today in the interest of future generations. This summer's scorching heat is bringing the message home in a direct and often painful manner to a lot of people who didn't previously care and didn't understand the risks of climate warming to their own lives and to life on the planet as a whole. We all have to understand and communicate the benefits to health, environment, and the economy, people's own pockets, of halting climate change. Climate action is ultimately in all of our interests, a win-win, and it's up to us. So there you go, guys. That ties it up. Kind of a sad article, isn't it?
Yeah, it covered a lot of ground, though. It sure covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
Yeah,
and,
it was
and,
a
you know,
very thoughtful blog, incredibly thoughtful.
Yeah.
Deep dive.
Deep dive. Deep dive. Well, guys, we have been, and I said I was going to do an hour, and we've been an hour and a half. So I really want to say goodnight to everybody. Jennifer, first of all, thank you so much. And all of you out there, thank you. We had a troll, but I didn't let him bother me. Al Franken, you're welcome back if you'd like to come. As long as you behave yourself and you're not too out there, come back. Come back. Rebecca Allen, thank you for coming. And Scott Compton and Jimmy Cunningdale and Rick Smile and Jin Tao and Lupe, Chris Bobbins, John D., Gary Hoover, Scott. Oh my gosh. All of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for helping us with our fundraiser, guys. I'm almost there for the technological, the techno fix. Yeah. All right, guys. Jen, would you like to say the last?
Well, I mean, this has been a profound show. It's been a sad show. It's been a hard-hitting show. And we took a look at so many things. We took a look at the satellite pictures of Lake Mead. I mean, just look at that. Look at the trend. We saw an article that said climate scientist says that total breakdown is now inevitable. The language being used is amazing. We took a deep dive into Zach Labe and his State of the Arctic in the Polar Bear International, and then ended up with this very, very profound article in the ice blog, Wildfires and Ice Heatwaves put spotlight on the Arctic. And it's all about the Arctic, and we're all waking up to that. We're all understanding that. So happy to be with you all tonight. And I guess we'll see you next week.
Thank you guys for all of the donations for Buy Me a Coffee. Once again, you're all wonderful. I love you all. Good night. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.